Hello, everybody. My name's Kelly Frankie, licensed marriage and family therapist, and this is Purely OCD. We are going to be talking about the OCD cycle today, and as a reminder, this is not a replacement for therapy. This is educational purposes only. I am just waiting on my partner in crime, Lauren Rosen. Here she is.
Hello.
Hello.
Partner in crime.
Partner in crime, man.
What crime are we going to do today, my friend?
I don't know. Hopefully violate our minds a lot.
Cool. I'm always game for that.
So, I'm already feeling burned out and the conference hasn't started.
For context, those of us joining, and you should definitely check this out, the IOCDF, the International OCD Foundation's yearly conference, is online again this year because of COVID. And so we have been recording our presentations. They're all pre-recorded, and then we're there to answer questions in a live Q&A after the fact. So that's why Kelly's burnt out. And it hasn't even started. We did two. Well, I actually did
two.
3.
You did 3.
Yeah.
We did 2 back to back. I'm pooped out. Let me get some water. Hold on.
Yeah. You drink some water, girl. Get hydrated. And I'll share with those of you who have joined us too that the topics we're going to be talking about, I'm actually really excited for our presentations this year. We're talking about thinking the unthinkable. We're going to be giving a talk on taboo. I know, it's so weird. It's so unlike us. We're going to be talking about taboo obsessions. So think thoughts about pedophilia, thoughts about bestiality, thoughts about harming your children, those kinds of things.
Violent, sexual, intrusive thoughts. The stuff we don't, people don't typically talk about. We're going to shed some light on them and hopefully throat punch shame in the face, right?
Yeah, I just punched my microphone in the face.
But nice.
Give
it the old hook.
Yeah. So that, and then we're also going to be talking about how to navigate when OCD attacks the things that you're genuinely interested in, right? Hobbies, interests, passions, so that you can learn how to navigate recovery and achieve recovery while still maintaining those interests.
Yes.
And then I'll be talking about OCD and substance use disorder in the context of 12-step recovery with the wonderful Stacey Conroy. So there you go.
Yes. She is wonderful. I haven't met her yet, but I would love to.
Well, I could make that happen probably. She's great.
Cool. Let's make it happen.
Let's make this happen. We're here to talk about
do it.
OC to the D.
To the DD.
To the DD. So we're going to be talking just about the sort of general stuff today as a nice refresher for those of you who are here. And if you want to ask us questions as we go, we're going to just start by giving an overview. And then we're happy to talk about how specific themes can be sort of looked at from the vantage point of the obsessive compulsive cycle, which is really important in knowing how to move forward with treatment and recovery.
Yes. So, why don't you start us off, Lauren, by explaining what an obsession is?
I would love to, Kelly. Thank you. An obsession is defined by the DSM. Oh, I'm going a little too clinical already.
Yeah, maybe start over. We'll go restart. Oh, it's because we're in the conference mind. Okay.
We are.
Let's go. Okay. We got it.
Obsession. And Obsession by Calvin Klein. No. Obsession, right? Isn't that a thing? No.
It totally was.
It was. So obsessions are thoughts, images, urges that pop into the mind. They're intrusive. That is, they're sort of like intruders into the mind, as an intruder might come into your house, like break in. And they're sticky. They have this quality where they're just sort of difficult to shake. They like to, if they were actual intruders, they'd be hanging out and setting up shop in your home. They cause anxiety. We can both speak to that personally.
Mm-hmm.
They cause doubt because OCD is the doubting disorder. And yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what an obsession is.
So you nailed it. When we have an obsession, naturally, it's only natural to then say, I don't like this feeling. I'm going to get rid of it, right? Because who would be like, oh yeah, can I please have some more of that? Nobody would.
No, gross.
That's disgusting. So
Yeah.
moving on. So then we go, oh, let me get rid of this. So a person with OCD is going to engage in compulsions, which we see in a variety of different ways that it manifests. One would be the very overt type, which is the observable kind. It might be checking, counting, anything you can see visually. Then there's the covert, which is the mental compulsions or rumination, where you're trying to spy. Yeah, they're very covert. They're trying to get intel and data and find certainty in the answer that OCD is presenting you with. Then there's the reassurance seeking, which is going to be a lot of asking of other people or even self-reassurance, right? Everything's fine. It's going to be fine. Or am I okay? Do you think that, the way I looked at that kid was appropriate? Do you see that the door's locked? Stuff like that. Then there's going to be the avoidance stuff, which is powerful one because it does work really. And I mean, they all do to varying degrees, but I feel like avoidance can be kind of the nail in the coffin. And you're just basically avoiding any possible trigger or potential trigger completely, or you're at that point engaging in, there's roping in of other people to do the compulsion for you. So why is that a problem? Lauren, you take the floor.
I'm glad you asked. It's not a problem. It's a big problem, actually. Compulsions are the problem. But people think they're the solution because of all of the things that Kelly just outlined, right? Like, it's helpful in that compulsions take away your anxiety temporarily, which is a big part of the problem. So basically, you do a compulsion, you're like, okay, I wash my hands, I'm safe for now. But then, of course, the obsession's going to pop back in at some point, right? Like, it's eventually going to come back up. And then you're like, oh my gosh, well, now I know what to do. I've got to eradicate my doubt and my anxiety by doing a compulsion. And so over time, you become a slave to compulsions, which is not fun because, you mentioned avoidance is very... It really gets to the goal of compulsions by helping to alleviate anxiety. But then after a while, you start avoiding so much that you're not even living your life anymore.
Right.
And mental compulsions, you might find yourself ruminating all day and not being present for life, even if you're out in the world living it. You might find yourself doing so many behavioral compulsions that you can't leave the house, not because you're avoiding, but because you're stuck by a sink or in a shower. And you might start to eat away at the relationships that mean a lot to you because every time you're in conversation with somebody, you're either overtly or even covertly trying to get them to reassure you that your fear thoughts aren't true.
Yeah, and there you have it. There's the OCD cycle. Or the OC cycle.
Bam. Right there.
Bam. So, good news is, in all this, is that it's treatable. And though Lauren and I both live with and have overcome a lot of OCD subtypes, taste the rainbow. That
hashtag taste the rainbow.
God. That a big reason why that reinforces why I chose OCD. I do know it really well, but it's payback time OCD.
That's right.
Coming for you. But also that you see people get better, right? Exposure and response prevention really works. And people that are willing to put in the work that is required, which is really hard, scary work, and it's not going to be necessarily linear, but they get better, you know? And that's kind of a rare thing to be a therapist and see a turnover pretty quickly, because a lot of people go to therapy for 15, 20 years and they're talking about the same stuff. I'm not saying there's definitely some really good talk therapy out there that things do need to be processed. But I guess I'm just saying this is treatable, and it's treatable in a relatively short period of time.
Absolutely. I agree. Do we want to talk about what ERP is? What is this mysterious exposure that you speak of, Miss Frankie, Mrs. Well, whatever.
Yeah, I didn't change my last name.
Yeah, Ms.
But it's complicated. It's the BBS that's a problem.
It's a different story for a different time.
Different day. So exposure and response prevention, exposure and response prevention, restart, or exposure and oh my gosh. Okay, exposure and ritual prevention as well, whichever you choose, is essentially we're bringing up the feared thought, image, feeling, sensation, whatever it may be, fill in the blank. And then we are choosing to then not compulse. So that's in a nutshell how it works. I feel like I've been talking a lot though. Do you want to take over?
Oh, I don't think you have, but yeah, I think you're right. I'm brilliantly said, friend. The idea is that you're you're exposing yourself to the things, you're making yourself anxious, you're not doing anything about it, and you're feeling so hard.
Right in the gonads,
right
and
there,
the floor drops, and then we're going to sit there. Well, metaphorically, although sometimes you do literally sit, but when people say like sit in the feeling, we don't necessarily mean like, okay, we're going to sit down in a chair and now we're going to feel the feelings, unless that's your specific homework. But what we are trying to say is that we are allowing the thoughts and feelings and scary sensations to occur without actually engaging and judging them. We're just letting them pass on by, just like as if there's this magic window on the other side of your ear, and they go in and then they come out. Some people they're just born with that, which screw those people. I worked really hard for that other side of the window.
Well, and because I think oftentimes it doesn't even register as like a problem. That's just not it's like, oh yeah. Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, that was a weird thought. Well, what do you mean that was weird? Why?
Right.
Don't you want to analyze every single layer of it and try to figure out why it happened?
Come on. You could be a bad person. Doesn't this bother you?
Right.
Of course not. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The ear window. I like that.
The ear window.
Somebody asked if this is being saved. It is being saved. I just want to point out too, and I know I sort of try to pepper this in generally, but when we talk about these things, you might notice that we're laughing, that we're being playful. And I think it's really important to bring this energy to our work with OCD, because it is a deeply painful, distressing, and dark disorder to live with on a daily basis. And so part of recovery looks like bringing a little levity, a little laughter to the process, and especially talking about these things in communities where you're going to be understood. And hopefully by us talking about these things in this way, it's clear that you can live a life with OCD that's much brighter than the one that you might be living if you're in the thick of it.
Yes, exactly. Well said. And and I would just say for me, I would say I was reflecting on this actually recently, and I think it was because of the not talking taboo. That's for the in-person conference. This one, Thinking the Unthinkable, we just recorded this morning, is that I think there's been two huge factors outside of the exposure piece, right? In my recovery, and continues to be, is the humor aspect because obviously we do have to laugh. We have to. But also having, and I'm sorry to say this, but having one of, my best friend who happens to be an OCD therapist, which is a very unique situation. I understand that. But even if she wasn't, that somebody else gets it and they're like, oh, yeah, I hate that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you don't have to
I do
explain
know
it.
what
And
you mean.
yeah, I know you don't. And also, even if that weren't the case, I think that's why social media can be so important, because breaking the shame, right, which is exactly what we just talked about in our presentation, is so important. I thought for so long, like, this is just what people do, right? And there's something, this is just what my brain's always done.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
no, this is not okay.
No.
This is something that can be treated.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Beautifully said, friend. And
cool.
obviously I feel similarly that, and I agree, humor and being able to talk about this openly with somebody who gets it and who's also not going to reassure me within an inch of my life. Not that I've been prone to seek reassurance from people throughout my life, except for that I totally have. So,
and that's okay too, right? Like, can we just,
not all
it
reassurance
happens.
is, well, first of all, not all reassurance is compulsive, but
That's right. But
some is, and I may or may not have done some compulsive reassurance seeking in my life. And I think having a community of people like here on Instagram, and like you might find amongst each other here while you're watching, there's a whole bunch of people, and that by finding others who understand what it's like, it does make the fact that you're having these thoughts so much less bothersome, because it's like, oh yeah, well, Kelly thought that the other day, so I guess we're both. I guess we're both crazy.
We're sickos.
Not crazy in like a stigmatizing way, but
Yeah. Leaning into the OCD's words. Well, and also I love when clients come in and they'll say a thought and then they laugh themselves at it and they're like, that's so silly. Well, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's so great that they, just by saying it out loud, they're able to have so much space from it. Whereas yesterday they were so fused with it and unwilling to say the scary thing. And now they're able to just say it and now they're fine, right? They don't even need me, but somebody was there to listen and hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. Being a witness of that. What a beautiful thing that we get to do.
Yeah. It's pretty special.
It is. By the way, I did see a question pop up. If you wouldn't mind throwing that into the question mark box, as soon as we're done sort of giving this overview, we're going to hop on those questions and we'd be more than happy to look at yours too.
And we have a few already.
Okay. Let's just a couple of quick things I wanted to mention.
Yes.
Emotions don't last forever. And I think one of the ways that OCD really gets us is by saying, if you don't do this thing, you're going to now feel anxious for the rest of your life. You're never going to feel better. And we have to kind of be willing to call OCD anxiety on its bluff. And to say, yeah, okay, maybe I will feel that way forever. I don't know. I mean, the only thing that we really do know is that everything changes. So it's a pretty bankable likelihood that this too shall pass. And so being willing to feel the feeling as it's here, instead of like, make it go away, because resisting it, trying to push it away is so counterproductive.
Yes, it's true. Good point. So do we want to, answer some questions? Sure.
I think we do. Yep.
Okay. How do we want to do this? Do you want me to choose different subtypes? Well, I mean, do you want me to choose at random anything or?
Yeah, I support it. Whatever floats your boat or tickles your fancy today.
Okay,
also,
let's do it.
I do think that somebody just mentioned motivation to do exposure work. I think it would be good to do an episode on that.
Okay, let me make a note. Otherwise I'll forget.
You're so welcome. And yeah, so we do save these every week, 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We record a different episode and then we save them to our YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to, or to Instagram TV. So, and if you have any other things that you'd like to hear discussed, we do try to keep it on topic from week to week so that when people rewatch, they sort of know where to go, if that makes sense.
Yes. And actually, I do think we have the motivation. I mean, it could be different, but I think I just worded it as know your why.
Yes.
But I think maybe motivation is better because it's pretty straightforward versus me trying to make it sound fancy. Okay.
I liked it.
I'm going to pull from the top.
Cool.
Okay. So this person asks, what is the compulsion in ROCD? So I imagine it's either relationship OCD or religious OCD, but I'm going to go with relationship. What do you think?
I think that that's a fair call since relationship OCD is generally ROCD. I think you're right.
Yeah. So what are some compulsions? Also, you can refer back to our previous, we recorded that one like 5 times.
We did too, because we kept getting cut off and
Yeah, long story.
anyway, yeah. So should we start by just acknowledging what the obsessions might look like so that we can paint the full cycle for people?
So the obsessions might look like, am I in the right relationship with the person I'm with now? Are they, I don't like the way, are they the one? I don't like the way that they talk or the way that their nose is, and becoming hyper aware and obsessed with just one particular feature of the person. Yeah. There can be so many variations of it though. So
definitely. And yeah, I think that the general theme is what if I'm in the wrong relationship? What if I stay in the wrong relationship? And what if I'm perpetually unhappy or less than optimally satisfied?
Ooh. Missing out on the perfect experience.
Yeah. OCD is all about that FOMO, you know?
Yeah, it really wants it.
Yeah. So compulsions, let's take one of the examples that you gave.
Well, avoidance is a big one, right? So it could be, I'm not going to date anybody, or compulsively breaking up with somebody because we're going off of a feeling state and fear.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think that that's so on point. You might, you mentioned the sort of, it's almost like a BDD by proxy or body dysmorphic disorder by proxy, where you're having intrusive thoughts about your partner's appearance and whether or not you're actually attracted to them. So you might find yourself checking their appearance and then checking whether or not you're aroused at all.
Yeah, the old groinals.
The old groinal response.
Do I feel aroused enough?
Yeah.
Well, if we keep checking, chances are it's gonna be the opposite of what you're looking for.
Yeah. We're gonna feel something. Now, what you're gonna feel, hard to say. Wait, I lost you for a sec. Can you repeat
that? No, I don't know. I keep going. Sorry.
Okay. No, all good. So yeah, that can be a compulsion, checking to see if you're attracted to the body part or if you are attracted to your partner in spite of the body part.
Mm-hmm. Asking for reassurance. Is this person, what do you think? Do you think they're the right person for me?
Yeah. Trying to check other people's or gauge other people's feelings toward the person. Like, oh, are they judging my partner right now? What if they think that they're bad for me? Ooh.
And just a quick side note, and then we'll go to the next question because we could spend a whole 5 hours on this. Mm-hmm. Is the caveat with this is a very much a table topic type of an obsession, meaning versus the taboo stuff. You're not going to be outwardly, typically, talking about how you maybe had a groinal response to you washing your baby in the bath, right? But to say to your friends or your loved ones, like, hey, do you think they're attractive? Is not an outrageous question to ask. So you can compulse pretty easily with other people in ROCD.
So true. And people will very readily say, like,
they offer it, man. They'll just give it to you.
They will totally give you a reassurance, but also they'll be like, are you sure that's OCD?
Oh, well, yeah, that's, it can go either way, to be clear.
Yeah. It's like the downfall of it is that people are like, well, yeah, but isn't that a legitimate concern? And you're like, I don't know, is it?
Right.
So yeah, but good question. Oh, is that a question or is that just somebody wrote in the? No, it's somebody wrote in the.
It was in the question box, I believe. So this is the next one. Because I think what happened is I had posted on my stories for people to just give subtypes that we could talk about. This one's moral scrupulosity, which is always a fun one.
Truly. So the cool thing about moral scrupulosity is it can attach to any moral desire or desire to be moral, and it's not. It can be so varied. Not like religious. Well, of course, religious scrupulosity is about specific religions, which can span all of the religions. But from person to person, it's going to be essentially similar morals. This could be anything in theory, and I say that because one of the talks I'm going to be giving at the IOCDF conference this year is about how my own OCD and how I got a diagnosis in the first place revolved around being perfectly moral in the context of 12-step. Like, am I being rigorously honest with my sobriety right now? Right. It was an obsession that I had, but it can look so many different. Would you like to give an example?
Sure. Also, you don't have to be religious. Like, you don't have to subscribe to any religious, formal religious. Words would be great today, but apparently I'm lost. Don't have them. So meaning you can have these high standards of moral expectation of self, and they just kind of fold in on themselves, just like anything related to OCD. So it might sound like, I have to be, maybe I sent out an email that wasn't 100% perfect with how, maybe your boss would have liked it. But in order for you to be like a morally right and just therapist, I don't know, or employee, you might go back and redo it or ask for reassurance from your boss. Did I do it right? Did I do anything wrong?
Yep. Reassurance is a really good one. Yeah. Just pulling for like, hey, do you think I'm a moral enough human, whether it's about an email or anything else?
Or breaking the law, right? Like going through a red light.
Yep.
Or a yellow light.
Finding money on the street. Like, oh my gosh, did I steal? Am I a bad person? That kind of thing,
I didn't return items for years because I was so worried that every time I would go in,
bad thing,
they thought I was stealing.
Oh,
even today I feel a little like, eek! And then I just keep going because I need that money.
Yeah, because you're not going to use the thing that you purchased. Yeah,
right. Because ironically, returns are for a purpose.
Yeah. They are for a purpose. That's true. So yeah, I mean, but the compulsion to that end is I'm not gonna return. Right. That's avoidance.
Right. It could work for years.
Yeah.
But is it worth the anxiety, by the way, folks?
Or the money that you're going to lose, really.
The money, although, yeah. Right.
And the stockpile of stuff that you don't need.
Right. Well, then you just eventually stop buying things until you know for certain that you want them.
Right.
So that comes into the decision making.
Right. And
which I'm so good at.
Yes. Well, it's generally a good one. So you can see that it falls into a lot of different potential compulsions, whether that turns into rumination ahead of time or avoidance altogether, or even reassurance seeking. Do you think I need this? What about this?
Yeah, totally. Okay, sorry to switch gears. I saw this question. I think it's relatively urgent and important.
Switch gears away.
So this person asks, I have my first appointment with my therapist tomorrow. Should I ask her to do ERP with me or let her guide? I'm worried, nervous. She won't have knowledge, experience on the relationship OCD I'm suffering with. And she's my third therapist so far. Ugh.
So first of all, congratulations on
Not
really putting
giving
your
up.
yeah, and putting yourself out there and being willing to do the work. This is not easy, and
Mm-mm.
our hats are off to you. We can't give you direct advice, but what I will say is generally when choosing a therapist, when you have OCD, it is really important sort of to vet them and to see what their expertise is beforehand. So you do want to generally try to find somebody who specializes in the treatment of OCD using exposure and response prevention, acceptance and commitment therapy, or somebody who's well established within the community.
Yeah. I mean, there's not that many of us there, but there are a lot, I guess, too. It depends, and
For sure. And I think what I was getting at too is that not everyone subscribes to just ERP or
yeah,
just
totally.
ACT. There's Dr. Reed Wilson, who
Who's
is very
fantastic, by the way.
fantastic, but he's not really ERP. He doesn't, he talks about not being a sort of ascribed to the ERP model, even though a lot of what he does is the response prevention side of things, from my understanding.
Right. And I also think that different approaches for different situations, while we might all be saying different things or using different language, at the end of the day, our approach is kind of the same.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I also want to sort of acknowledge too, there are people who aren't necessarily part of the traditional ERP community, like Cheryl Paul, who works a lot with relationship OCD and is incredible, who's actually a depth or Jungian
Yeah, that's so cool.
yeah, based. So you don't have to necessarily, but I think somebody who understands OCD, who's not going to try to answer the question that you're experiencing so much doubt about, because that's the problem. So,
And I just wanted to add too is that a lot of therapists, general therapists, will say they specialize in schizophrenia, OCD, generalized anxiety, depression, substance abuse. So you cannot specialize in all of those things. It's not possible. It's not. It takes a lot of experience and time, and you have to be supervised by people who are specialized in that. So you might see the credentials that say they treat OCD, but I want to see somebody who only treats OCD and OCD spectrum disorders.
yep.
However, that being said, you might find somebody who actually does do like usually talk therapy, but they do have some experience in OCD, and they will be able to offer some tools and maybe send you in the right direction as well. Okay. So I want to be conscious of time because I have to pick up my little one from school. But should we do one more?
I'm on board for one more. And if we didn't get to answer your questions today, please feel free to ask your questions. Like I said, we do this every week, and we're happy to support and help as we can.
Okay, there's a lot of questions. Thank you guys for all of these.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to randomly pick one. So,
Okay. Sometimes I'll be having an OCD spike, miserable, and not even realize it's my OCD. The mental distortion is so scary. It's hard to
tell the difference between my thoughts and my OCD thoughts. Can anyone relate? Mm-hmm.
Well, let's just, for anyone who's here and watching, can anyone speak to relating to this? I think that this would be a good time to sort of incorporate the whole community here.
Yes.
I can relate as somebody who has OCD to like, oh my gosh, but what if my thought is an actual indication of my genuine desires? This is part of the game that OCD plays. And actually I wrote an article about this phenomenon called doubt, denial, and OCD.
Great article.
Thanks.
It's just saying, I'm suppressing my true self, which is a sociopath or psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing it so well, I don't even realize that I myself am manipulative.
Well, because I'm convincing myself of it, right?
Right.
Or, I'm totally, this happens a lot with sexual orientation OCD because
Yep.
the denial buzzword, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what if I'm just in denial and I can't admit in my heart of hearts
Mm-hmm.
who I truly am, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't matter what sexual orientation you're identified with and, what you're afraid that you might be missing out on and living in an authentic life because of not identifying with.
Yes, which bleeds well into the relationship OCD, as
Mm-hmm.
you all could imagine, because you have very creative minds,
Mm-hmm.
how those two may play nicely there.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, that's a big one. And at the same token, this person's asking, telling the difference, right? Is that it is not our job to figure out what the difference is. In fact, that in itself is compulsive because now we're trying to delineate between good and bad thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And what's my OCD versus what's
Yeah,
regular? And that's just a fancy way of saying, like, how do I make sure that I'm not the thing I'm afraid I am?
right. And early on in treatment, though, however,
However,
your therapist may say things like, oh, I guess OCD's here today, or they might start calling it OCD. So
sure.
things that we say in here, it's usually just a very general, broad,
Yeah.
sweeping explanation because there's a time and place for a lot of things, including reassurance when you're trying to get buy into things or reality checking, as I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, just keep that in mind. But we do not want to say, well, how do I know that's OCD?
We don't.
We don't. We don't. And
Which
if
is
it goes
scary.
into, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is scary.
And it's totally freeing on the other side of it.
It is. It gets better.
It really
And
does.
I think I heard Alec Pollard a few years ago, or no, it wasn't a few years ago. You know what? It was about 10 years ago.
Bang.
It was very funny. I so enjoy his humor. He's super sharp. And he was saying something so good. It was like if you put a timer on, if you're sitting in a session with a client and you say you knew for certain that in 10 minutes this person's anxiety was going to go down, it would be gone, just eliminated for the most part, right? Like maybe a 2 instead of a 10. And you told them, I know for a fact, and they knew you knew, they would be so much more likely to do that exposure. And the thing is that we actually do kind of know. We just don't know how much time that's going to take.
Yeah.
Right? It's like this stuff does work, but
Right.
we got to do buy-in here and just take this leap of faith that me leaning into it may or may not make me a psychopath.
Right. And the thing is that you have to be willing to feel it without reservation and without expecting for it to go away in order
Yes.
for it to naturally pass.
Well, yes, that is important to say. Yeah.
I did want to make a note for anyone who's rewatching this that we did get a lot of people saying that they did relate on here to, right, to fears
To this
about,
person. Yes.
yeah, which I think is important to note. It's quite
Yes.
common.
Yeah. So, with that being said, thank you all for
Yeah.
joining us. We appreciate all of your questions. I apologize we didn't get to all of them. Please come back next week so we can answer them.
Yeah.
You can always message us. We'll try to do our best to return messages. I'm not the best at doing it in a 24-hour turnaround because I have clients that I have to obviously give priority to, and I have a child too, and
Yeah.
things. So,
And
but
even if we don't
eventually
get,
we will.
well, and even if we don't get back to direct messages, if you want to throw us some ideas, certainly we can try to incorporate them into our future lives. And just a reminder, we can't give direct advice. So as much as we might want to support you, we can't. It's not ethical to do so on a social media platform outside of the context of therapy. So
Yes. And
well,
with that, I bid you adieu.
Adieu.
And I will see you on the flip side, my friend.
You sure will. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, you guys have a great week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.